he's been out for a long time. So that starts to tilt the scales in favour of Joshua.
Pro boxing fans here at the famous Alexandra Palace, here for the Haringey Box Cup, here with none other than Mike Costello, Dazn'S Mike Costello. How are you doing, sir? You all right?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Enjoying it here today.
Let's talk about the history. Let's talk about this cup. You know, it happens every year. A lot of people are involved. We've had a lot of fighters now who are elite that were once part of this tournament. Just talk to me about the history of this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's one of the joys of coming here. I come here every year, although I haven't been here since 2019 because of the pandemic years, and also last year we had a show on DAZN at the same time, so I couldn't get here. But this is one of the highlights of the year for me. I adore this tournament, and wandering around. I mean, just before you came to me, I was literally watching contests in two separate rings and turning one way and then back the other way to catch the action in each of the rings. And you know, anybody who knows anything about this tournament knows that it's been a good breeding ground for some very good professional champions in the future. And there's always that in the back of your mind as you're wandering around the various rings here. Are you watching someone who is going to go on and feature on DAZN or Sky or wherever in the future?
Is there any names that stick out? Is there any names that, you know, people should be looking out for?
I've only been here today. I mean, I've seen a couple in I've been watching mainly Ring A, but there was a young lad from Ireland, from the Holy Family Club in Drogheda, Davy Joyce, lovely southpaw. In the ring behind us, a lad from Gemini ABC, Lennon Skeggs, who I thought won, but he didn't get the verdict, but just seemed to me to have the style that could really make an impact in the pro ranks. And we've just seen a contest in the A ring again with the Deji Adegbola from Wrexham. I just don't know him where that boy could go, and maybe go nowhere the way he fights, but tremendous power and tremendous excitement. And it was interesting that, you know, there are decent crowds watching each of the rings here today, but when he got in the ring, everybody seemed to swarm over to that one ring, and that doesn't happen very often here. So it just goes to show that he's got some kind of pulling power before anybody really knows who he is outside of amateur boxing circles, you know.
I think there's a fight going on there. Leighton Birchall is a name that I've been told to look out for. Talk about boxing now. Do want to talk about probably the biggest fight that's been made in boxing, and we've seen the two press conferences in the US between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. A fight that fight fans, myself, everyone involved in boxing has been calling for the last couple of years. Mike, break that down for me. Such a good fight.
Yes, it is, and I think it's the kind of fight that boxing and boxing fans have been crying out for, and that's the kind of fight that can help boxing to make a real serious impact in the mainstream and not beyond the edges, whether it's in the UK battling against football and now cricket during the summer, or in the US battling against the NFL and basketball and baseball and ice hockey. This is the kind of fight that can take us back to the days when we were used to the best taking on the best. I mean, from my era growing up watching the very best in the States, I've heard a lot of comparisons to the Sugar Ray Leonard against Tommy Hearns fight. For me, it's not quite that big, and it's not quite that big because of the kind of era that we're in. There isn't the same kind of clamour around the two fighters. They're not the same kind of personalities. But in terms of the level of skill and pedigree and class and all the factors that go together to making a great fighter, it's hard to think of another fight out there where there would be so much quality in the ring on one night. And that's why I think this is so special, and why we've all been looking forward to it for so long. And I think a lot of us feared that it would never happen. So there's that extra edge to it, that finally it's coming around. And it's coming around when they can both still fight. You know, this isn't a case of one of them's gone over the edge. I know there are issues around Errol Spence and what's happened after the spills on the road, but I still think we're going to get something that's between two men right at their peak. I hope we do.
Do you want to talk about the heavyweights? There's a lot of talk about Anthony Joshua returning back into the ring. At the moment, it doesn't seem like they can agree. That fight with Dillian Whyte right now, it seems to be a difference in regards to money from what we're hearing. But the fight that everyone's talking about right now is the fight in December, possibly with Deontay Wilder. Just talk to me about that one. I'm sure yourself, part of the DAZN team, if that fight does happen, you're going to be there covering it. But just talk to me about the state that Anthony Joshua's at this present time and how dangerous a fight that can be for both fighters.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a very dangerous fight, but it's, I think, close to the best fight that can be made out there in the heavyweight division right now. And I know Anthony Joshua got a lot of stick for his last performance, and we on DAZN, me and Andy Lee were commentating on that. We got a lot of stick for apparently being too kind to Anthony Joshua. I don't think it was as bad a performance as many others do on the night, given what had happened with those two defeats against Alexander Usyk. Coming back, getting his arm raised again was so important. And I thought what happened a week later when Joe Joyce got beaten by Zhang Zhilei was just a reminder to everybody of what can happen in the heavyweight division, what can happen in any division. And so it was important for Anthony Joshua to get back in the winning vein. And it seems as though all that I'm hearing from within is that August the 12th is the date that he wants to get out. Eddie Hearn wants to get him out, whether it's Dillian Whyte in the opposite corner or not. But I think that will be really important for him in the build-up to any potential fight against Deontay Wilder. And it might well be that we get to December and Wilder hasn't fought. So that means that Wilder's been out of the ring for a long time. And I suppose when you look at the makeup of Deontay Wilder, ring rust might not necessarily be an issue, but he's been out for a long time, so that starts to tilt the scales in favour of Joshua.
Obviously, when Anthony Joshua's name gets mentioned, obviously Tyson Fury's name is always there. He's, potentially the number one. Everyone that I speak to says, listen, it's going to be very hard to beat a Tyson Fury, but we're at a stage where Tyson hasn't fought in a long time. A lot of people, including Eddie Hearn, say maybe he's prizing himself out of fights now. Maybe he wants too much money and the money isn't there. Maybe the Saudi money is so high that it's tempted everyone to put their careers on hold until they can get that fight in Saudi. What do you believe is happening with Tyson Fury and why he's not fighting right now?
I don't think anybody outside of Tyson Fury and those very close to him really know what's going on. He sends so many mixed messages, but that's what he seems to like to do. So what Tyson Fury is going to do next, I have no idea about, really, genuinely.
With Alexander Usyk signing with Skills Challenge Promotions, obviously the Saudis out there, what do you reckon that does to boxing? We're hearing that there could be potentially a few of the big names in the pipeline, Deontay Wilder's, even a Canelo fighting out there. I know the name's Badu Jack. Badu Jack's actually come out and said we can't agree a weight right now. But what do you make of the Saudis and what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to get used to this. I mean, when we went there in 2019 for the rematch between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz, it was said then that they were going to be big players. They're becoming more and more of a presence in all sports. And so it's highly likely that boxing in Saudi Arabia is going to become much more commonplace. And maybe not just in Saudi Arabia, but in the Middle East in general.
Do you want to talk about Daniel Dubois fighting Alexander Usyk in Poland? Can I ask you, with everything that's going on, obviously him changing training, he's moving over to Don Charles. What do you make of that fight? Do you feel like Daniel has a chance against Alexander Usyk?
Well, he has what everybody else would agree is a puncher's chance, but we've seen how Alexander Usyk against Eric Chisora, against Anthony Joshua, is such a good reader of opponents and how they punch and when they punch. And if someone like Joe Joyce has read him, then you'd have to fancy Alexander Usyk to do the same. Now, of course, if Dubois can land one on him, then... But I think you'd soon go broke if you backed fighters who only ever had a puncher's chance.
Final question before I let you go. There's a lot of talk, obviously, with the lightweights. We've seen Gervonta Tank Davis beat Ryan Garcia this year. We've seen Devin Haney beat Lomachenko. People are umming and ahhing over that decision, but it was a very close fight. In your opinion, who's the king of that division? We've got Shakur Stevenson, Gervonta Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, and we've got quite a few names there. Who do you believe is the best in that division?
I'll tell you what I think is the best fight out there, and I would have to study for a long time before coming down on one or the other, and it's Devin Haney against Gervonta Davis. And that to me, we talked earlier on about Errol Spence against Terence Crawford. If there is a bigger and a better fight out there, then Gervonta Davis against Devin Haney would be very, very close. But again, if that sort of fight happens, if the Spence and Crawford fight does go ahead and it looks like everything's in place, if we get these heavyweight fights in December, then suddenly we're talking about a very different sport all over again. This next 6, 8, 12 months could be absolutely massive for the sport globally as well as here in the UK.
Obviously, in the last couple of months, the British boxing's been a bit quiet in regards to the standards that we've seen in the past couple of years. I spoke to Frank Smith and asked him about pay-per-view stars that they're trying to build. Obviously, it was going to be Conor Benn, so with the whole drug situation. That's taken a halt and is stalling right now. But do you feel like in regards to British boxing and the fights that we're seeing here that we're in a period of transition right now?
I do, yeah. But we have got some very, very classy champions. Let's not forget. There are some good fighters coming through, but there is Tyson Fury there. Chris Billum-Smith just won a world title. Sonny Edwards we saw last week. There is an awful lot of quality out there, plus all of those coming through as well. Maybe you could describe it as a period of transition, but we'll also see the boxers coming through from the last 2 Olympic Games, from 2016. We're still seeing Joshua Buatsi. Has he reached the peak, or is there more to come from him? And we've got the class of 2021 as it was in Tokyo because the Olympics were delayed. We've still got that class coming through. The Olympics happening again next year in Paris. So there's a constant turnover. So there's every reason, I think, to be optimistic about the next half a dozen years in British boxing.
Actually, final one before I let you go. A lot of rumours coming out now that we were talking about the Middle East. I've just talked about Conor Benn there, just mentioned his name. It seems that there could be a fight potentially in the works for September 23rd. I think I read the date right, in UAE between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. What do you make of that fight? Because obviously they were supposed to fight the first time around. We know what's happened in the past or what's going on right now. What do you make of that fight?
Yeah, I think that can be just as big as it was around this time last year when we were building towards it. I think it will be just as big. For a lot of people, it will have a lot of dirt attached to it, and a lot of. I think there might be, in some cases, almost a protest against it and a refusal to watch it. But by the time it comes around, if it comes around, it will be a monster occasion again, whatever anybody says.
Well, Mike, I do appreciate your time. I've taken up a bit of your time today at this great venue, at this great tournament. No doubt I'll see you at an event very soon, but thank you so much for giving us your time. Thank you very much for talking to pro boxing fans. Thank you.